Hi, I'm Dr. Diane, and I'm doing what I call the Love is Blind reunion redo. Because aside from the technical difficulties, there are just so many things that were missed in this reunion for me. We were promised the tea that we didn't get, and for those of you who might have felt a bit traumatized by this series, it's because it's getting more and more dramatic. But I'm starting a Love is Blind support group for PTSD because last season it was PTSK and this season I'm calling it PTSD, just a little therapy joke. But are you in? Because in this video, I want to go over how I think this reunion could have been done better. But make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss a single video. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome back. Okay, so what did you think of the reunion? When did you even get in? I ended up getting in late on Sunday night, but oh my gosh, what a fiasco. I just can only imagine the heads that are rolling at Netflix. Having said that, if you had to rate the reunion on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it? Because I'm giving it like a 4 or 5, and I want to talk about how it could have been better. I don't know, could we get it to like an 8 or 9? I'm not really looking for the tea per se, but that's why people like reunions, okay? And reunions for me, I've talked about this in The Bachelor, can be like redemptive stories. Like I take accountability for my actions and I talk a little bit more about what was going on behind the scenes. Maybe we see some never before footage, we get some updates. I don't even mind bloopers, that would be funny. But people like reunions because I equate them a little bit to like having closure or a final talk in a relationship, right? You can't wait until you get closure because you're thinking, I want to know about this and I want to know about that and what was going on. And sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't. But for me, okay, there were 3 big misses and I'm going to get into each of those 3 misses. But the point of the reunion is to have the right person asking the tough questions. And lots of chatter on social media about is Vanessa that person to do so. Nick doesn't get many words in, but here's the problem I have. Vanessa, to me, I think she can be great on entertainment, but feels like your aunt at a wedding who corners you and asks you personal questions like, how's your sex life? When are you having babies? And for me, that's just way too personal, okay? Couples A deserve more privacy. This has only been a year. Their lives have been very public. Inquiring about Bliss and Zach's sex life, and then each of the couples, when are you going to have Love is Blind babies? Here's the thing, oh my gosh, so many women struggle, couples, with fertility. What if some of the couples are trying to have babies and they're being unsuccessful? So for me, I was on Dave Neal's podcast and we were talking about projection, what it is, what it isn't, and Dave was asking, do people project into the pods? I said, that's not projection, that's fantasy, but here is a projection. Vanessa is projecting her own needs and wants for a 4th child onto everybody else. And like, if we're all in this together having babies, maybe I'm not the mother, because she said something about being the mother. No, I'm not that old. Okay. But let's go through what I think could have made this reunion better. And you probably still have burning questions. And maybe you have other questions. Let me know in the comments. I want to start with Jackie and Marshall, then talk about Paul and Micah, and then talk about Kwame and Chelsea. Then, of course, I would have wanted, huge miss, Brett and Tiffany, and Zach and Bliss. All right. I want to get into the first couple because this, to me, was just a big boo-boo. And back to Vanessa, I think she was easy on some people, hard on others, but it's like there's no in between and it doesn't feel fair. It kind of feels like we're either talking like going after something with like Micah and the smirk or Kwame's name, or we're talking about babies. It felt like it sort of lacked the right kind of rhythm. Okay, and I've said this before, these reunions are hard. So let's get into Jackie and Josh, and let's just talk about the setup first. So why weren't they there in person? It's a burning question. Well, Jackie just posted in her Instagram stories that they were both receiving death threats. No one should receive death threats for being on a reality dating show. But if they needed to protect them and keep them safe, I get that. It doesn't mean that we couldn't still ask those questions. And I also thought, I don't know what you did, that Josh should not have been with Jackie. Like, he could have come in, but she's hanging on him. It's like all this bravado about proving that they're a couple. Okay, whatever. And Vanessa's just happy we have one more couple. But there were questions that she needed to be accountable for in her relationship with Marshall that had nothing to do with Josh. So I just didn't see that. Okay. But we have to talk about Jackie and her tone and what we saw and what we didn't see. And I think this just could have been moving the conversation forward a little bit more. So if this were me and I was in the pod as I'm sitting here, I would say, Jackie, girl, so many people fell in love with you, Jackie, in the pods at the first start. Jackie, you were a sweet soul in the pods. I can't forget that conversation when Marshall was sharing the difficulty he'd had in childhood, and you were like, oh, baby, you're not going to be that way. I trust you. You're great. And even after the reveal, it looked like, you said it was giving all that, right? Like, you looked happy. You really did. And in Mexico, that was all happy. But here's the thing, Jackie. There was lots of other negativity, not just towards Marshall, towards some of the other women, some things that you said about other people. And I think people wanted to know more. Jackie, where was that coming from? Oh, okay. Well, thank you for sharing. So sometimes you hide behind humor. Did I get that right? Oh, okay. Good to know. Because I think some people in the audience might be looking for that. Other people have come forward, Jackie, and made apologies. And I think that would help your cast. Okay, hopefully she apologizes, right? But you also said something super important to Marshall, that you're somebody who flips. And you said that, and you kind of worried that you were going to have that. And then we saw it, okay? Whether because it was getting too real, or you realized that you had feelings for Josh, or maybe in that moment you just worried like, oh crap, I chose the wrong person. Is that what happened? And I could see, right? We could see you were trying to say, I'm going to do something different. I go for the bad boys. I'm going to choose somebody soft. But somehow it didn't quite do it for you. Tell us. Okay, so it's hard for you to receive that kind of emotional support. That's not what you're used to. Fair. Totally fair. Okay. And now, Jackie, thank you for clearing up that you broke up with Marshall before your coffee date with Josh, right? Okay. I imagine that that's got to be hard, that people think you're a cheater and you're not, okay? But here's the thing, and I don't know if the order is as important as the fact that that breakup was really cold. There was no crying. It looked like there was a lot of anger. But we know that beneath anger, there's usually sadness. And people really want to understand sort of the timeline better. Okay. So what we saw is that Marshall at some point, Jackie, called you a project.
I saw you as a project.
With potential, but a project, and you tried to back away. And I could like see it in your eyes. I don't know when that happened exactly. It was before you were meeting his family, but like somehow that triggered you. Did I get that right? Speak to that. Oh, because you're the breadwinner and you work hard, you put yourself through school, you don't see yourself as a project, right? But he somehow implied, and that was a big no-no for you because you wrote that on your Instagram, that don't think that you are better than me. Is that right? Okay. But Jackie, here's the other thing, okay? And now I know you said you've got receipts, and now you're telling us that he made a slur, and you're letting us know that everybody else knew that you'd broken up, and everybody else knew that Marshall had made this slur about you. can you see, Jackie, that this is something we call kind of toxic masculinity? Because you did tell Marshall to man up, okay? And then it seems like that triggered him. He called you a project. You said to man up. I don't know what order those were, but that both of you were triggering each other. Okay. Well, here's the tricky thing, because other women are out here watching this and they see a man like Marshall who's partnering to you, saying, honey, you don't have to go home to your house alone. You've got me. And those are good partnering skills, right, Jackie? Yeah. And even if that doesn't work for you and you want a more manly man, we have to be careful because we're trying to move the conversation forward about men being more accountable and being more emotional. And this conversation really sets everybody back. So what do you want to say about that? Tell the followers about, what was going on and what you might have done differently. Thank you, Jackie. Okay, now let's talk about the ring. You weren't engaged, yet you somehow thought that you deserved the ring. People didn't know. Was this about the money? What was it about? Okay. So back to the toxic masculinity. These texts talking about Marshall being sweet, code word for gay, and then of course this word, you being called out for having a jawline. That's the problem that people are having, Jackie. I don't know if it's all about the timeline, about the cheater, as much as this is a step back and we want to be progressive. And if the point of it is to fall in love emotionally and not care what somebody looks like, we have to be careful about those conversations. You said at the start you want to be accountable. Do you feel like that should also come with an apology? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so what if we had something like that? I'm not perfect at that dialogue. I might switch things up. Obviously, I'm going to be responding to how Jackie responds. But, wow, there was so much there. So much meat that we could talk about toxic masculinity, about sexuality, about identity, that we have to be careful. And if you follow me, I'm nitpicky about these terms because we can cause damage. And there's mental health issues, and we need... And if they're going to have this show, we do need to have more sensitivity, really. Okay, now, time out. Let's talk about Marshall, because now I'd be back in the studio, live studio with Marshall. And it's okay, be Barbara Walters, have note cards. And if you need to, because there's no teleprompter, I'm sure that's probably hard to run a live show. Okay, so what I would say is, Marshall, welcome back. Thank you for being here. I can only imagine how hard this is. You don't have Jackie here. She's not in our studio audience. You don't get to confront her directly. You got gypped. It was so evident that you were so into this. You wanted a partner. You didn't get to be on the altar, right? And we want to give you a chance to talk, okay? Because everyone was rooting for you. They were rooting for you and Jackie. And we loved your sensitivity. We loved the relationship with you and Brett. Such good male bonding that we can all kind of learn from, that sensitivity. But here's the two things that are burning, okay? The public wants to know, one, you called Jackie a project with potential, but let's have you own and be accountable for that. What is your piece in that? Because we know it takes two, Marshall. Okay. Fair. Maybe you've learned that you need to find a partner who is more healed or has more to bring. That's part of your journey. Okay. Thank you. And two, Marshall, we can call it a so-called joke, but there's no such thing as the Freudian slip, right? That there was some truth there. And we know, and Jackie has said, and I hold her accountable for telling you to man up, and that must have hurt you. You talked about your sensitivity, about your issues with your dad. We know that. You talked about being bullied for your sensitivity, and we want women to be partnered with men who are sensitive. But we want to understand the timeline. Like, obviously there was hurt there when you were going to sign the license. Maybe you jokingly said that, but that's not a joke. So what do you say, even besides from Jackie, to other people who are following and who are in this place? What do you say to them, Marshall? Okay, I know you said that Jackie, you want to move on, you want her to be happy. Is there anything else that you need to say to Jackie or to the people who are invested in you, Marshall? Please say it now. Okay, that would be how I'd handle it. Again, not perfectly, but maybe better. Okay. Next up, let's talk about Micah and Paul. So here's the thing. Vanessa was a little bit too soft on Micah. This is where I think she's trying to support the women, maybe a little bit against the men. She came down hard on Paul, but like the conversation was circular and we weren't getting anywhere. Okay, so what I would say is, okay, Micah, Irina's here and has made public apologies for being a bully. You have as well. What do you want to tell people who were watching you be the quote-unquote mean girl, the laughing? Tell us what was going on for you. And if somebody was being bullied, what would you tell them? What have you learned about yourself? Okay, thank you, Micah. All right, so now the next part is, Micah, thank you for being here. You know how hard it is, right? You've got these couples here and you're not. And now we're hearing, because we've seen after what we just saw on Friday, is that you would have said yes. I'll be honest with you, I thought you were going to be a no, but you were blindsided, and the way that you look hurt even now, we were hoping that maybe we can get to something here. Maybe a little bit of closure for you. Okay. So, to be honest, if I just look at it as a couples therapist, I didn't think either one of you were going to say yes, because I just didn't see the level of vulnerability in both of you as a couple as I did in some of these other couples, the ones who said yes. Okay. For me, it felt like both of you were ambivalent. Is that right? Did I get that right? Because Paul right now is saying that you were saying to everybody else behind the scenes that you weren't going to say yes. But now you're forward facing and telling everyone you would have said yes. So I think we're having a hard time reconciling this. Were you a yes? Were you not? Did Paul make you feel more insecure and more anxious because he wasn't making you feel secure? Okay. And I know, Micah, and I want to hold Paul accountable for this, but that hurt that somehow said you weren't going to make a good mother and you want so desperately to be a mother. I want to hold Paul to that, okay? Okay, then I would switch. Then I'd go to Paul. I'd say, Paul, hold on. Zach, your boy here, is coming for you and saying that you took this experiment seriously. I got that. I felt that. You were clear that you had fallen in love with Micah. Nobody doubted that you were in love, but it was always a question, and I never felt that you were completely all in. What do you say to that? Okay, so even now, Paul, here's the thing. Your friends were even saying that you're a pretty analytical person, and we saw that. And even now, you use big words, you kind of hide behind ineffable. People are like, what does that really mean, Paul? Okay. I feel like right now we're trying to look at something amorphous. Like, she needs to be more organically nurturing. Thank you for saying that you didn't bring it out of her, because that's exactly what I hold you to. Your part, Paul. Okay? So here's the thing. Okay? You weren't creating safety for her, were you? That there was so much ambiguity on your part, and it looked like you were holding back. You were not being completely vulnerable, were you? That she couldn't relax into this relationship. And then she asked you to go first. And then maybe you were surprised. Okay. But here's something for the rest of everybody watching, and I want you to take this to heart. If you have ever blindsided a partner, or you've been blindsided, you got to take a long, hard look in the mirror. Okay? Why? Because were you hiding something? Were you not being honest? But I have to ask you how you created the blind side. Did you mislead Micah? Whether you were supposed to tell her or not about this nurturing part? Because here's the thing. You can just say, I don't feel it. We're not right. I don't think we're a fit. And that's a good enough answer, okay? That here we get into blaming, and we really have to just create space for it to just be not a fit, okay? But Paul, I didn't see the vulnerability that I have seen in some of the other men here with you. I think you were actually more vulnerable with Zach, and everybody says it's kind of a leap, but I'd have to wonder, you know, your parents showed up and they were divorced, no judgment, but are you scared of marriage? Do you struggle with being vulnerable? And do you now have anything to say to Micah to help her heal and move on, because you can see how hurt she is? Okay. How would that feel if you heard that? Okay. Now, Micah, does that give you more closure? One other thing, we do have to talk about your friend Shelby. She's been coming under attack. Are you still friends? That looked hard. What's that been like for you? Okay. I want to know about that. Like, we dropped the ball on that one. Okay. All right. Conversation number 3. Let's talk about Kwame and Chelsea. So many funny memes, right? About like, Kwame, blink twice. What's going on here? And I think unfairly, the show was projecting this relationship between Kwame and Micah for being something bigger than it was. The whole time, to me, it felt like, oh, those two are over it. Why are we going back to that? Because they like the story of somehow you're going with your second choice. And I feel like it's such a disservice to the couples, okay? Brett and Tiffany have an easier story because it's not the second person, right? And we love that. So, like, why are we playing this up? But I have to say, I thought that Kwame and Chelsea actually handled this really well. Not only did they look beautiful as a couple, dressed the same, I loved all of that, but I thought that Chelsea really held her own and said this was a narrative that they were producing. Beautiful. Boom, on the money, mic drop. Chelsea, that was really good. And I thought Kwame stepped up, right? He said, I owe my wife an apology. This looked ugly. We didn't need to see that clip between Micah and Chelsea on the stairs. Who cares, right? Who cares if there was a smirk? I don't care. I don't think it mattered, and I think they handled that beautifully. But here's what I would have wanted. I would have said something like, Kwame, gotta be honest with you. You're married now, so happy to hear it. But the rest of us, as we were watching, what we saw is I saw you struggling, do I want to be married or not? Not so much about Chelsea or not, but like that you're a bachelor and you're thinking about your running trail and you sleep on your sofa. It seemed like it was harder, and now you're married. Tell us what that transition has been like. Do you miss anything about your single life? What have been the positive things about marriage? Like, help us move from looking like he's being held hostage to now happily married. Like, I want to see a transition. I want to understand better how this couple got here. Okay. So that's what I would have gone for. Now, having said all of that, there are some things that I did like about the reunion. Okay. I actually thought that Irina did a really fair job. She owned her stuff. She came dressed for revenge. She looked great. She has made public apologies. She now made an apology about being the bully. She directly said to Zach that she was mean to him and that she owned up for sending, Bliss the text that she dodged a bullet. Okay. And I liked that. All right. I think, could we have gone a little bit more? I don't know how much we would have gotten from that. But here's what I also liked. I loved how Zach and Bliss handled that. Like, wow, what maturity. And even, you had like a 2-week engagement. My God, boom, boom, boom. These two, I think, were like the couple who came the furthest, right? That they both said that they forgive Irina. This to me is healed trauma, because if you follow Zach and you know the difficult past he had with his single mother who was a stripper, difficult mental health, alcoholism, and now he's healed that and says on a public show, I forgive you. I really think Zach's the prize, right? So I liked how that was handled. And I also felt like maybe the host could have handled that better, because it was sort of like Zach had to say to Irina, and that was like when the crowd went wild, you're just here for fame. And I sort of thought, again, a host could have handled that, but Zach did that himself, and I'm so rooting for these couples. I feel like having to deal with all of that, they are doing a tremendous job. So those are my favorite couples. And here's the other thing about, again, Brett and Tiffany. I'm still wondering about Brett's mother. She has mental health. She didn't come to the wedding. What's going on there? Chelsea told us that she met Kwame's mother. That's great. Did we learn anything there? Okay, that Barbara's really his sister. All great. She's not an actress. But I want to know more about Brett and Tiffany too. And I feel like I'm going to follow them. But that was another miss for me. Like, let's focus on the positivity, okay? Because here's my worry. We set the tone now that drama is what the show is all about. Not that it's about love, but it's about being the second choice. It's about wanting somebody else but not getting them. And that's not true. We need a softer narrative that you went through this experience, you fell in love in the pods, which I love the premise. It's not about looks. I fell in love with you emotionally, then physically, and then we took a leap of faith. Like, that is the story. So how can I land this? What can we learn? Here's the reality check, okay? I like to give a reality check at the end. You don't need a reason to break up with someone. You don't need receipts. You just need to learn from your past, figure out who you are, figure out who the best partner is for you, and then persist in that dating to find that person. That's it. Because it's never going to win when we're defensive. It's never going to win. You don't need to prove anything. Lots of couples don't work out for lots of reasons, and it's okay. But let's like the idea that love can be blind, it can be blurry, we can fall in love, and some couples will survive. Not all, as we see, but I think it's an interesting way to talk about what we can learn about ourselves, about good communication, about sticking it through, having important conversations, and doing it in a way that is accountable and respectful, and you bring people along on the journey because you've got the right feelings, right? And you're really there for the right reasons. All right. That's my reunion redo. Let me know in the comments what you thought, and again, who you think would be the perfect host for the show. Because I think we could find some people to do it a little bit better. If they keep them, what are we going to do? But I just would love to see a redo.